Well, first of all, the big word and the buzzword at the moment is sustainable, with all the main parties. The buzzword with us would be survival.
Deputy Michael Fitzmaurice, thank you for joining us on Agriland. The news this week, I suppose, was announced by yourself that you're going to join a political party with Michael Collins and Richard Donoghue, and it's going to be the Independent Ireland Party. First of all, tell us why you've made this decision to join that particular party.
Well, first, I've announced, or I said over the last year, that I was basically at a crossroads in the line of, if you watched the makeup of governments over the last number of years, one time ago with the likes of Tony Gregory, that was done great work for the people in Dublin. Then we went to 3 or 4, then we went to 5 or 6. Now we're at 12 of the Greens. And I think that politics needs a bit of balance back in it, because for the agricultural sector especially, and indeed rural Ireland, and indeed, you know, the difficulties in housing and all planning, all the problems that's out there, I think we need to, as independents, basically come together, put policy documents together. A lot of us come from the soil. We come from farming background, or we're still farming, and we feel that there's a detachment from the present government there at the moment in relation to the needs and for people right around this country, but especially in the rural areas and in the agricultural sector. You know, looking at the makeups of governments at the moment, you will need probably more than 12 the way it's going, because it looks like there's 3 legs to the stool in most governments now. One time ago there was one party and then there was 2, but now it seems to be the makeup of 3. And, you know, we believe that things needs to be addressed. We won't do it on our own. That's the bottom line. And I think that we have to face up to that, or the tide will keep flowing out, and we will leave areas less well off down the road. And that's the big reason. We also believe that there's a lot of people disaffected from the main government at the moment. And when you say to them, they'll be given out. And when you say to them, well, who will you vote for? Well, they turn around and they say, well, you know, I really have no one to vote for. So they'll get that opportunity now, and let's see how it goes. You know, everything you do in politics is a risk. History will tell whether it was the right or the wrong thing, but at least we can always say that we will be giving people that opportunity to decide what they want to do.
And how many members are you hoping to get now for this Independent Ireland Party? And are you courting just the independent TDs and senators, I suppose, or councillors, or are you looking for others to jump ship from main parties?
Well, look at everyone that has common sense, or that has the same vision as the documents that we are putting together at the moment, will be welcome on board. This is about, basically, you don't have to be in politics at all, to be quite frank about it. There's a lot of great community people out there at the moment that never were in politics, and they are quite welcome. Anybody is welcome. The door is open. It's not confined to any sector, any person. Everybody, no matter who you are, is welcome to talk to us at any time. And there are councillors that today, there'll be councillors being met, and there are prospective councillors that want to run for the first time. We would also envisage that we will be running candidates for the European elections and obviously the general election.
And tell me, you know, if a party such as Independent Ireland became successful and got a significant number of seats, theoretically, in the next government, I mean, what do you feel that party could do that would be more beneficial to farmers or the agricultural community that the existing parties are not already doing or trying to do?
Well, first of all, the big word and the buzzword at the moment is sustainable, with all the main parties. The buzzword with us would be survival, because if you look at the farming sector around this country, at the moment, every day there's someone kicking them into the teeth. There's some new report out, or there's someone telling them that we'll have to do X, Y, and Z, and then there's someone telling them that they might have to cull their herd. In any walk of life, in any business, you have to have surety going forward to have confidence in that sector. And at the moment, there is a lot of lack of confidence in the agricultural sector because farmers don't know whether they're coming or going. There's a new rule being brought in nearly every month now at the moment. Give you a case example. Farmers in peaty soil next August, the EU is bringing in a rule for their BIS the following year, they'll have to commit that they wouldn't make a new drain or they wouldn't shore that land. And there's uncertainty, and I think they need clarity, and I think all parties need to give clarity in relation to, one day there's talk about a cull of the herd, the next day it's denied, but you can't keep going on like that. In any walk of life or in any business, you have to get confidence and to get money flowing in businesses like that, you have got to give them a path for the next 5 years, because if you don't do that, then you won't have an agricultural sector that has enthusiasm, which I believe it needs. I also believe that we need a rural Ireland that has enthusiasm. We need to, we all know that we're in a housing crisis at the moment. Rural Ireland is the solvent of it. But what do we see in the last week? New planning guidelines that's basically trying to stop one-off housing, while at the same time telling everyone they need to move into smaller towns when Irish Water don't have the infrastructure in place. The madness that's going on from some of the statements, it's sad, in my opinion, some of the statements that comes out, there's no common sense involved. But I suppose if you have most of your ministers from 2 counties in Ireland and one of them in the city, they may not understand how the people live and work and make those areas vibrant, because we've seen it down through the years. People in communities right around this country, the work they have done, the infrastructure they have put in place. Why would you tell someone at the moment that you shouldn't build a house in some part of Ireland if it's a rural area after the roads are there, the ESB is there, thank God, the broadband, there was great fanfare about that, bringing it right around the country, and it is, it is great that it will be there. But why would you shut it down then? Why wouldn't you actually encourage more people to make communities vibrant? Because the knock-on effect of this is that you will have less people living in it. You will also have problems for the local school, the local football team, the local shop, at the local pub. And that's what makes a community vibrant. And it is sad to see so many people that have put in Trojan work right around this country, voluntary, may I add as well, and the likes of that document is nearly a kick in the teeth to them.
I suppose in terms of what the government is doing for rural areas, it's probably they are trying to make them more, not urbanised, but obviously, yourself, it's cheaper to put services in for 20 houses than it is to bring one into a remote part.
I totally disagree with you, because first of all, if I'm building my house or my son or daughter is building their house on the land, they have to put in their own sewage treatment plant. If I go into a town, it's Irish Water, it's the state that has to pay for it. If I build my house in the countryside, I basically have to give a development fees for local amenities. I don't get streetlights. I don't look for them. I don't get footpaths. I don't look for them. So let's do the cost analysis. But let's step back at the minute and have a little bit of common sense about this. Have we enough houses in Ireland at the moment? The answer is no. Will we have enough houses for the next 4, 5, 10 years? The answer is no. There's youngsters, there is people, and there's youngsters going to college. The price the parents have to pay for accommodation, and they're basically on top of each other nearly within in places. On top of that, normal society has gone just completely upside down. One time ago, if there was a garden or nurse above in Dublin, they were able to afford a house, or they were able to get a mortgage handy enough. Nowadays, they can hardly afford the deposit on that house, and they are struggling big time. And we need to alleviate this. There's a lot of houses as well, and in fairness, the Creekunda scheme, for doing up old houses is a good scheme. I'm not a person that knocks everything. And then it's good, I'll always say that it's good. And it's a good scheme. It needs to be speeded up. and we need to get more vibrancy into the rural areas, and we will by doing that. But we need to make sure that we're not, on one hand, just wiping out areas of the country with the new planning regulations, and hopefully common sense will prevail on that.
And then in terms of the new political party, so if you're trying to cover the rural areas, will that mean that you'll be targeting certain areas for political candidates to make sure that you have all areas kind of covered?
Well, a housing problem in where I'm from is a housing problem in Dublin as well. It's a housing problem in Limerick. So if you make good policy, it solves people right around the country. If you make good policy in health, a person living in Waterford or Donegal or Galway should get a proper health service, not a lopsided effort. And I don't look at this thing as country and city. I look at this as Ireland solving its problems for its people, because everyone should be treated equally and looked after the same way.
And Deputy Fitzmaurice, if the likes of a party like, Independent Ireland, Rural Ireland, even a bunch of other independents went into government, the issue that a lot of the government parties would say is that, particularly with regards of agriculture and the Common Agricultural Policy, that's coming from Europe. There's only so much that the national government can do, as you saw yourself. The national politicians could not change the nitrates derogation drop for the country recently, and many other things coming down the line. The nature restoration law, that's coming from Europe. How much can you achieve in this new party in a similar vein, like when you are somewhat constrained by what's coming from Europe?
Everything is coming from Europe, everyone will tell you. And yes, you're right, 70% of our legislation comes from Europe. But that legislation goes into a council of ministers. We have Irish ministers out there that need to start hitting the table, not nodding to everything. The nature restoration law, I brought it up in the Dáil before there was nearly ever, once the document was written in Europe, I got a tip off about it. Minister Ryan stood up within the Dáil and said, bring it on, bring more of it actually, not even what Europe was proposing. We need more of this. Well, how can you have a minister from Ireland going out? The people couldn't have great faith in that. When you see a part of the country, like from Donegal down to Kerry or West Cork out to parts of Offaly and Kildare, that it would have a peaty area. That is not now. That is not up to 2030. But after that, they will know what hit them. And the people will wonder then, how did this come about? The Habitats Directive, our ministers went out and agreed that document. I remember years ago being told by our now President Michael D. Higgins that it wouldn't affect any turf cutter. 10 years later, there was helicopters and planes flying over our heads and guards in every bog. That's the consequences of bad legislation. And now we see it in airports, roads. We see it up the road from my constituency office here in Lochfinchina, where a designated area that's dying on its feet, it is being blocked by legislation in the courts. And the sad part about this is, does Europe not think that people matter? Because there's elderly people up around there that are in danger of water coming in on top of them in their houses. Should there not be a bit of common sense? And I don't buy into this that we have no say. I believe that it's the ministers that go out and the civil servants.
And Deputy Fitzmaurice, earlier you mentioned that rural Ireland, and particularly the agricultural part of rural Ireland, for them it's an issue of survival, and people are talking about sustainability. I suppose, just to play the devil's advocate, when people mean sustainability and the Green Party or the climate activists, they're also talking about survival. Survival of the planet. So it is there for people to farm for generations to come, but to try and make it, last as long as possible, because the science is showing certain things. And would you have an understanding or an acceptance of that? Say that Independent Ireland got into government next time round. I mean, you would still have to, and Ireland would still have to meet its climate goals, be it for 2030, 2040 or 2050. Every country has a responsibility to meet the climate goals.
Can I be very clear on this? Ireland has signed up to climate goals. And I remember the day the vote was on, and 10 people was all that stood up that day and said, what you have signed up to is not achievable for 2030. History will tell in time, was Michael Fitzmaurice or Richard O'Donoghue or Michael Collins, because we all voted against that. Were we right? And I would bet with anyone we will be right, because we decided to sign up to something that was unachievable. Do we sign up, or do we build a house and put in a bad foundation? At the moment in the agricultural sector, everyone was talking about emissions, everyone was talking about methane, everyone was talking about carbon. Did anyone measure, or did we do a countrywide measurement of the hedgerows that's in this country? No, we didn't. What we measured when we were looking at basically our sequestration was the forestries, the forestries around this country, be it Quilcha or private, and we looked at the old oak forest. We never looked at the amount of trees that was around. Go around every farm. I'm a contractor. We go around farms, and many a day we give out about them because the mirrors and the tractors are out a way wider now. And we would say, don't you think they cut them? We'd call them bushes. And we'd say, because like if the gear nowadays is pretty expensive and
large.
And large, yeah. And if you go right around farms, right around this country, the amount of white thorns and black thorns, and I know ash is in trouble at the moment, but also beech trees and all different, and hedgerows right around this country is unbelievable. But we never went round, and it was promised 3 to 4 years ago in the Ag Committee that I'm on, when the department came in and they said they were going to do an LIDAR system of the country. Northern Ireland has it done. We were advised that they needed to do it every 14 or 15 square meters to get an accurate assessment. Has that been done? No. We're only starting now. As reports has come out at the moment from Teagasc, that the amount of peat soil that DPA were counting in Ireland, they are now saying it's about half what they were saying. How can you get figures together if you start at the wrong place? So what we need to do is do a full review of what is going on in this country before we sign up to stuff that's unachievable. And there is no basically allocation that a cow eats grass. Well, to put weight on the cow, she has to use a bit of the carbon. Like, it is not all going up in the sky. And we also understand that methane in 10 to 12 years, like a cycle. And if you look at Ireland's cattle population, it was actually higher in the 90s than it is now. So we need to start making sure as well that we understand that we don't live on fresh air, that we will need food. Are we shaping for a Europe or an Ireland where we'd like to see a farmer looking out the door and a tourist coming along and they have no cattle or sheep? And as is happening at the moment, the likes of Canada and other countries getting more land ready because they believe Europe will want their food. Now, if you're talking about environmentalism and if you're talking about sustainability, well, I don't think bringing food from Canada is more efficient than growing it in one of the best countries for growing grass. And what appears to be happening at the moment is there's a logic there that Europe wants to be the consumer or the eater of the food, but they don't want the emissions that's with it. And that is going to be detrimental. And it's great to see the farmers right across Europe standing up and being counted, because, in my opinion, we have lost the run of ourselves in this whole debate. There is an awful lot of things you can do better. And new technologies, you know, like the accuracy, we're contractors. In the accuracy now for spreading fertilizer, the accuracy for spreading lime, the accuracy for any works you want to do, there's technologies there. There's new technologies, or there's new additives coming out to reduce the methane if for giving cattle. There's an awful lot of stuff coming on stream. So you don't keep kicking the person that's doing the farming at the moment. Give it time. It will resolve itself with technology. That's what will happen. Not go for the big bang and leave farmers in a situation where they believe that they're not wanted. And sadly, that's the situation at the moment. But we also need to look at other things in the line of, have a look at Europe, the mess it's in with the numbers of farmers that it has lost over since 2010. And I believe, as much as I would see a lot of flaws with what some of the projects that Europe are on about. I believe Europe will cop on that we need a scheme to get younger farmers back into farming, and I think that we need to do that in Ireland as well, because if we don't, have a look at the numbers. When we joined the EU, we had 300,000 farmers. We have 130,000 BIS applications at the moment. So that's 170,000 gone since the 70s. And if we keep going down that trajectory, that's not good. We need to make sure that we move land on. And the stats will tell you that younger farmers, when they take over, they do things probably that bit better. And we need to reward those people that done it for so many years with a scheme that encourages them to hand it on.
And just two final questions for you, Deputy Fitzmaurice. With a political party that's made up of independent public representatives, and we've seen it in the past, sometimes it doesn't necessarily have a whip like the traditional parties, and sometimes they can dissolve somewhat because there's many differences of opinions. How could you reassure your electorate or the general farming community that, who might have that concern about a new party of independence?
Well, first of all, we will have a document in relation to every department, be it health, agriculture, the same as any of the main parties at the moment. There'll be a document there that the people or the members will agree to. That's the first thing. So that's a document that everyone has basically signed up to. On top of that, if you go into a programme for government and the document you have is brought into the programme for government and it's agreed, well, you're hardly voting in what you agreed. That's the first thing. The second thing is that on budgets, whether people like it or whether they don't, whatever money you have as a country, you have to divide it out at a budget time. And you have to make sure that a budget goes through. There's no ifs or buts about those two things. The part where we are different than the mainstream parties in the line of the whip system is that when legislation comes into the Dáil at the moment, and I've seen it many times, I, as an opposition person, see it at the same time as a backbencher. Now, in all fairness to anybody in a backbench, they deserve to know what's coming down. But it lands into the Dáil because civil servants wrote it, the minister says in cabinet we're doing this, that or the other, and then it lands into the Dáil. Is that a good way to do legislation? In my opinion, no. And in our opinion, no, with Richard and Michael. We believe that, first of all, the backbenchers or the people involved in the party needs to know what's going on. And second of all, you need to get consensus on legislation, because bad legislation is no good to anybody. And if you can get consensus on legislation, well, you'll make better legislation than ramming something through like happens at the moment. And there would be no difficulty in the line of a programme for government for, this isn't just Michael Fitzmaurice on his own. Michael Fitzmaurice and all the others will have a document there that they agree with, that they will have basically signed up to that document themselves. In a programme for government, if they agree to go in it, you agree with the things you're going to bring forward. And other than the legislation part, which I believe would be made better by the system that we're talking about, it would be probably, in my opinion, a more cohesive group, and it would be more transparent than what happens at the moment. Because what happens at the moment, it lands in. And in fairness to the backbenchers, I actually feel sorry for them at times. They're left that they're told like a poodle to go in and you have to vote yea or nay. That's it. There's no ifs or buts about it. And the sad part for them is that if they say, oh, no, I don't like this and I'm not going voting for it, the whip is gone. And I think we also have to understand as well that in any party, there's this thing in the media that people wouldn't have a row. I think rows are great, because what you do is you need to be upfront with whoever you're with, say what you have to say. But we're big grown adults. Get over it, move on and drive on, because that's how you make things better. Didn't everyone for the sake of the media saying, well, we're all on the one page. There'll be times, and if someone has to be called out, and sometimes you call them out, that's it. We're grown adults. We have to get on with it. But I think that if that is done, it will make for better politics and better legislation.
And finally, at the next election, should it be a case that the main traditional parties, such as Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael, don't get a majority, and maybe, for example, Sinn Féin does the next time around, would Independent Ireland go into coalition with Sinn Féin in a government?
Well, first of all, I think I was asked that question a few days ago, and I said, we should, and every party should, always sit down with whoever wants to sit down with them. You should never be afraid to sit down with someone. Policy is what's important. What you're in your document in getting it into a programme for government is what's important. That's the be-all and the end-all of everyone. And someone asked me the other day, would you sit down with the Greens, Michael Fitzmaurice, even though they would be totally different? I always sit down with everybody. And we would always sit down with everybody. But I couldn't imagine that in a programme for government, we would agree, Anton, if it was the likes of the Greens. But you have to show respect to democratically elected people, no matter what party they're from, to sit down with them at least. There's no such thing as saying that you're going and you'll end up agreeing something. But you have always got to make sure that you show respect to any other party, in my opinion.
Deputy Michael Fitzmaurice, thank you very much for joining us on Agriland.
No problem. Thanks a million, Stella.